Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Virtual CISO Podcast. I'm your host, the erudite John Berry, and with me, as always, the Agent J to my Agent K, Jeremy Sporn. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, and hello, everyone. Agent K, appreciate you recruiting me for this critical mission.
No worries. So what'd you think about the podcast? What'd you think of the conversation I had with Darek?
So, we started this podcast so business leaders could gain the knowledge, perspective, and really the language to speak about information security at that level that would allow them to communicate what we call from the server room to the boardroom. And this is what Darek does every single day. His whole goal is to bridge that gap between business needs and technology needs. So just super cool guy to have on the show.
Yeah, what really impressed me was his ability to communicate things concisely.
Very well said. What I love about him is his simplicity in attacking, and really, I use the word attacking purposely, attacking the need for businesses to drive technology, for the business needs to drive the technology needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And really, I got to ask you a question, because you're a practitioner that started a business selling a service that you know how to perform, and he's a guy who started a business in which he was originally a customer of. Do you think he has a bit of an advantage over you knowing what he wants from his own business because he was there already?
Tune in next week's episode when John actually has an answer to that question. That's a really hard question to answer and a really good question. I would say he definitely has some advantage in terms of the fact that he truly understands what it is that he's trying to deliver. I can think of some disadvantages as well, but like I said, we'll tease that for next week.
First time I've ever heard John not have a well thought out answer in 3 seconds. So we'll leave that alone. Look, all in all, people are going to love what he has to say. He absolutely blew my mind on what he thinks are the most important attributes of a successful CIO. I can't wait for people to hear it.
Agreed. So with no further ado, let's get to the show. Cool. Darek, thanks for joining us. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm awesome. So let's start super simple, right? Introduce yourself. Tell us a brief amount about yourself and a little bit about VelocIT, which we can clearly see up there in the corner of the screen.
And it's VelocIT. So okay. I love that start. So my name is Darek Hahn, obviously. I'm CEO of VelocIT. We are a managed service provider, traditional IT support company that really trying to bring a different mindset to the market, where it's focused on IT leadership, IT strategy, planning, structure, making sure IT is aligned with the business versus just IT for IT's sake. Really driven by the technology. We want it driven by the business. So we engage with our clients in a completely different way. We drive our relationship through an IT roadmap and a strategic plan. And we ask our clients to allow us to have a conversation about their business and where they want to go from a business standpoint, and then look at the technology solutions.
So Darek, before we get down to business, we have this tradition. We always like to ask people, what's your drink of choice?
So I'm going to be boring. Mine is iced tea.
All right. Slow down, Darek. Slow down. Sugar, non-sugar?
Actually, no sugar.
No sugar. All right. Little lemon?
I wrote a little note to myself. This is my wife's instructions: no soda, no alcohol, etc. I might get a little crazy if I'm adventurous and I put a little sparkling water with some cranberry juice in it.
Do you go black Ceylon? I mean, do we go? All right, so you're a tea guy. Let's go tea. You go black Ceylon. You go orange Pico, a little green.
I'm a simple guy.
All right.
Plain old iced tea.
Ice? No ice?
I had my allotment for my alcohol consumption in my 20s, and it was a good idea that I just stopped.
You know what? I think I could learn something from you. So I find it very interesting, this concept of a virtual CIO. So how would you, if I asked you just the question, what is a virtual CIO?
I would start with the question is, what is a CIO? I think too many people don't even know what a CIO is.
Fair.
To me, a CIO is a business person, not a technical person. Mm-hmm. And we have too many technical people acting as CIOs who drive things because it's technical, not because it's a business solution. The best CIOs I've met are ones with MBAs that really understand the finance behind it, understand the business need, and can really drive things from a business perspective. When you look at it that way, I'm in my industry, it's somewhat saddening because what I see is a lot of people using the VCIO term. They don't know what a CIO is, and so they throw an account manager into a client, and that person's job is to sell them more stuff.
Right.
And it's not really being a business liaison, a business guide. How does what we're going to do technology-wise help the business either from an efficiency standpoint or from a revenue generation standpoint? I mean, those two should be the most important things you talk about when you talk about new IT solutions. Go ahead.
So quick question for you there. So that's an interesting perspective, and I like it. How does the technology come into play? Would you say that the CIO is the person who is responsible from on the business side, and then a CTO or somebody of that nature is responsible for kind of figuring out, based on what the CIO is trying to accomplish, how we're going to accomplish that, what technologies we're going to implement, in what order, that kind of stuff?
I think it can. It's an interesting dilemma that I think titles get really screwy, because CTO can be a lot of different things, right? Depending on the business. I have a client right now that's a manufacturing company in the biotech space that has a CTO, but he's a technology person in the bio space, not traditional IT technology. But I do think the CIO needs to be delivering a plan, roadmap. We need to do these things to help the business move forward. I don't really care what the solution is because there's tons of solution out there for everything. So a CTO, director of technology, somebody who's more in the technical space should take that and say, we're gonna implement a new ELN or a laboratory notebook solution. Now let me go investigate 3 or 4 different solutions and figure out which one works the best for our business and fits within what the CIO wanted. We do an IT roadmap that includes, say, it's third quarter we're going to implement an ELN solution. We will then start to have the discussion from a technical standpoint. What are the ones that match what the client wants? They're looking at it from a use case, not from a what's the technology case. They could care less for most part. And so really that's where we're trying to divide the line between the two.
So it sounds as if you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, that the CIO translates the business need and vision into an actionable technology plan, and then someone else, an IT director, CTO, whatever we label that person, translates the IT plan into technology implemented technology set or stack.
Agreed.
Okay, cool. It's kind of interesting because that's it leads into one of the questions that I had for you, and I think you've largely answered it. How is a virtual CIO different than a conventional MSP consultant, like someone who comes in as an MSP and says, "Hey, you've got these issues," and they'll talk to the COO or CFO, and they're not happy with the IT implementation. Not that you've ever heard that, right? You see these MSP consultants that go in and sort of do that, but so. How would you differentiate that idea, and like how would you help someone who's listening to this who's saying, hey, this sounds like a pretty good idea? How do they differentiate the VCIO versus that MSP consultant who comes in and pitches this, pitches something?
For me, it goes back to the CIO as a true business partner. I think there's a lot of MSPs that are not selling that. They're selling account management. And what I'm really into is how do you, if I was in someone else's shoes and walking into this, and which is what I did, we bought the company 3 years ago with this in mind. I want to have the business conversation with the client. So I talk to my clients all the time about how we're running our business. And so we talk about finance, we talk about process and procedure, we don't have production, but we talk about how we manage ticketing and how we manage moving people around. And so there's a conversation that's really business centered. So if somebody wants to get into the space, they want to be that trusted advisor in the CIO kind of mindset, they need to be talking about a business. They need to be talking about the financials. They need to be talking about how the company is trying to succeed. What's their bottom line? How much, are they making a 20% profit, 30% profit? Getting an understanding of the business, what they're trying to accomplish makes such a big difference in what you offer for a solution. I'll give you a simple example. I've had a conversation with a manufacturing company that came to us and said they wanted to move to Office 365. I said, why? And they said, well, because everybody is. I said, okay, well, let's talk about you, and then we'll talk about the solution. And so we started talking about it, and they want to spend the least amount of money on technology. I mean, literally, they want to spend the least amount of money they could possibly spend on technology because they're a production facility that doesn't need technology on the floor. They're just using it for accounting and a few other places. So, for you, Google may be a better solution. It's cheaper. And they were like, what do you mean it's cheaper? I'm like, this is the part of the conversation that nobody has with them because they want to sell them Microsoft. And everybody's heard about Microsoft. Not that Microsoft is bad, but it may not be the right solution for your business.
Gotcha.
So to me, that's the conversation.
Gotcha. So realistically, like if I'm a SMB, SME owner or CFO or COO, those conversations are going to sound very different, right? Because most people are walking in and they're pitching a solution that they happen to carry in their bag. And even if they carry two, right, it's going to be one of those two. Where you're coming in, it sounds like from a different perspective. Quick question for you. So in terms of your background, are you a former business guy, a former CFO, CIO, CTO, owner of business? Because you are taking a different approach, and I wonder how much of that comes from your background.
So I've spent my whole career in startups. So I've hired the IT people. I typically was in operations. Everything from facilities is where I started. I moved into production, had IT reporting to me. What else did I have? I've done some of the accounting side of the business. So I've been mostly on the operational side. I grew up in a family-owned business for 30 years. So I've watched a family-owned business, watched a small business being run. And I've always dreamed of owning my own business. So we bought the company after putting together business, having experienced this.
Gotcha.
And by the way, experiencing the frustration of being on the other side of the IT world, wanting somebody to give me better solutions and better conversations, and got a lot of IT jargon.
Not only a lot of IT jargon, unfortunately, a lot of salesmanship. I think that consultative approach, is sort of ends up in a win-win. So when does an SMB know that they need a virtual CIO? Like if someone's listening to this, what's the pain point or what's the realization point where they say, wow, I need to take a different approach?
I'd say, I would turn that question around on you and say, when do they not need one? I have a two-person company that we have a plan for. I think it's really about the partnership they have with whoever they're working with. When you need to bring somebody in-house, we have a client right now that we're working with to bring somebody in-house. They're probably not going to be a CIO, but they're going to be a director level. But they're at a point where there are 150 people or so, and they're starting to really look at technology from a larger scale. They need more IT governance on how they manage new projects and new stuff coming in. So they're more an administrative role. We're still going to be handling a lot of their technology on the back end. But I think every company should have an IT plan. You have a strategic plan. People have financial plans, but they don't have an IT plan, which is one of the biggest spends for most companies.
Right.
So part of my thing would be, if you don't have a partner that's helping you in that area, you really should find one.
Yeah, so that's interesting. It's funny. I'm sitting listening and really the parallels between what you do and what we do is exactly the same way. I mean, the first question that I always ask when I get onto a call where someone might be interested in virtual CISO is, we need a plan. So either we're gonna come in and we're gonna develop the plan before we do anything, and then we'll execute the plan together, or you have the remnants or at least a short-term plan that's critical that we can execute on, and then when we get to the end of that plan, then we'll re-up the plan, right, or tune the plan or create a new plan. So yeah, I think we end up in the same kind of places. What are the from your perspective, right? What are the attributes of a good CIO, right? Someone who's gonna really help an organization. I think I kind of know your answer based on where you've been, but again, I don't want to assume for you.
Yeah, I think it starts with the business first. Are they really? Do they? I used to say, do they love business? Are they fascinated by how a business operates? I mean, I would start there. That if I was interviewing somebody for my company as a CIO, I would be looking for somebody. Are you interested in the whole business, not just the technology piece of the business? If we're a manufacturing company, are you fascinated with manufacturing and how it works and how I can make it more efficient and those kind of things using technology? That's great. But then they should be data driven. They should trust numbers. Too many people in the IT world want to do it by their brain and their opinion. And then the most important thing, can they manage up? CIOs really have to manage up. They have to communicate with the board of directors, with the C-suite. Can they communicate at a level that those people will understand versus at the jargon level? I think those are the most important things. Maybe there's a piece of it that's educator. Are they a really good educator, communicator? That's probably a big key of it, because it's a weakness in IT in general, is the whole communication area. But to me, a really good quality CIO has financial background, communicates well, and loves the business, loves understanding the business.
So that's really interesting, because I would think that If I asked that question to 100 people, I don't think too many of them would have came up with the same answer you did. In fact, I would venture a guess to say 95% of them would have not mentioned 3/4 of what you mentioned. I mean, the one
wrong or they're wrong.
You know what? There's safety with going with the herd. But I have to admit, you made a compelling argument. Because I think, it was interesting to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you at any point in there mentioned technical competency, right? And I think if you asked the average person, like, hey, we're going to hire a CIO, what's the single most important attribute? I think most people would say technically competent, right?
Yeah. And to me,
that's very interesting.
That if you're hiring a CEO to be technically competent, they're going to end up being in the weeds all day, because they're going to love that technology and they're going to be loving. There's a difference between technically competent from a how do you fix something and how do you get in and do things, to being technically competent when you understand how things work. But I think those are two different things. So the understanding of technology in a general sense and how it works and how things interact with each other, I think is extremely important. And that's the communication.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because, I think you've explained like the worst CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers, that I've ever met. And because they are people that love the technology, they love the bits and bytes, they love the security, they love to keep current on the latest technological trends and things of that nature. And I think what ends up happening with those people is they get focused on technological implementations to problems that they yet don't know that they have, and they become technology collectors, and they implement. You can always tell them, right, when you ask them what their information security strategy is. It's a product strategy. Oh, we use this and this and this. Is there an analogy to that in a CIO? Like if I walk in and I hear a guy talk about a product strategy as an information security strategy, I think to myself, okay, this isn't the right guy. Is there the same parallel when you walk in and somebody tells you their IT strategy in terms of their technologies that they've implemented and all the products they buy?
So we're somewhat lucky. We don't work with many CIOs, because our companies are typically small businesses and they don't have CIOs. But I will say, from a CFO, COO standpoint, or even CEO, they tend to talk that way. Well, we're a Microsoft shop, so you need to be able to do Microsoft, or we're going to Amazon Cloud. You have to be able to do Amazon Cloud. There's not a strategy in that. It's a technology. So it is a conversation that I think has to change. I think we're too focused on the product suite, and we're not focused enough on what is it doing for the business.
So here's an interesting question for you, and I'm curious, as an MSP, what your answer is to this. So one of the things that I think is a challenge in our industry right now is, everybody wants to be a security company, and everybody wants to sell security because everybody needs it. Everybody's being asked about it. There's a lot of money to be made and everything else. So what happens is we find that a lot of organizations who have an IT service provider, that IT service provider becomes their information security provider as well, and very often is providing not only IT strategy but information security strategy. To me, that represents a risk. From your perspective, what are your thoughts on that challenge?
So we've made it very clear that we will never be a cyber auditing cybersecurity firm, because we think those things should be separate. Just like in accounting, there's the people who do the doing every day, and there's an auditor that comes in and audits them. We think there should be somebody auditing us. And if you don't have somebody auditing us or your provider, you're putting yourself, to your point, at risk. I mean, the risk is you've got the fox watching the hen house, right? And if we're really confident in what we do and competent in what we do, we shouldn't be worried about somebody coming in and doing an assessment on us. I think it's something that'll probably over time will come out within our industry, that there will be a dividing line, there will be an auditing function, and there will be a doing function. But to me, there should be a dividing line between there. That's why we have shipped with companies like yourself and others that can come in and do that and be independent. They should meet with our clients, and they should have an independent contract with our clients, and we should trust that they're going to help us be better.
It is interesting. I mean, I don't envy the people that we work for. Because you and I, we both work for the same types of organizations. Most of them are between 10 and 1,000 or 10 and 5,000 people, right? Yeah. So there is a simplicity to having a single throat to choke, or one partner that you trust, and you're already doing this, and there is such a fine line. Like, where does the line of IT implementation end and information security start, right? So endpoint protection. Okay, well, then an IT service provider is doing, knock monitoring because you got to know up, down on server. Well, we can get the security logs there too. And, it is a infinite shades of gray, I feel bad for organizations that, they're just trying to keep their businesses doors open and running and grow their companies, and having to wrestle with multiple providers makes that a little bit harder. So it is an interesting challenge. It'll be, and like you said, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out, because we've seen some bad things where people have been too over reliant on a single entity to do everything.
Yeah, I go back to the accounting function.
Mm-hmm.
The reason there's all these accounting rules and auditing in place is because people do bad things. You're dealing with money, right?
Mm-hmm.
IT is getting to that realm. It's a lot of money that's involved, a lot of data. There's a lot of way you could take over a company.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're putting that all in one basket, that's pretty dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the old trust but verify, right?
Yeah. And I think maybe I'm a little more humble than some of my counterparts in this industry, but I feel like I should not be worried about you or somebody else in your industry coming and checking on us.
I don't think that's humble. I actually think it's the opposite of humble. I think it's super confident, and rarely in a conversation.
I don't think anybody's ever called me arrogant. I'm gonna have to.
I don't think I've ever been in a conversation with somebody who would challenge me from an arrogance perspective. I mean, usually I'm the most arrogant person in every conversation.
Well, and I don't think it is that you won't find faults in us.
No, listen.
We will have areas where we've fallen down. I would rather somebody checked us and made sure we were doing it right, and we correct it, than to ignore it and hide it, which is the danger, right? If I'm doing auditing and I'm doing your services, it's really easy for me to go, yeah, we'll get to that next month or next week or next year, and just hide it from you, the client, and then you're in danger. You're in risk.
So I always love to ask this question. Now, it's interesting. So I'm going to usually ask it about a CISO, but I'll ask it to you about a CIO. Yeah, but, in respect to the fact that you are. So if I asked you, I now have a picture of who you think a good or bad CIO might be. But I'm going to ask you to take a fictional character or some real person. Name some crazy person, right, that you think would make either an amazing or a horrible CIO, and why?
But there's so many people I could name, but what popped into my head when I heard this question, and I hate to say this, but do you remember Nick Burns?
Nick Burns, no.
So he was an SNL character in the 90s. I think it was the 90s.
Oh, he was the IT guy, was he?
And a horrible CIO would be that guy who walks in and says, move. And he would just fix whatever's going on and walk away. It's the lack of communication, the arrogance, you don't know anything about IT. The
use of all the buzzwords. I mean,
oh yeah, every acronym you could imagine.
Right. Just
to keep people at a distance and keep them from ever actually engaging with what the heck you're doing.
Right. So it's that IT bullying, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And listening to you talk, I can see that, because it seems to me like you put an inordinate amount of emphasis on the importance of communication from a technology perspective. And again, I think that's an interesting perspective, and one that I don't think most people, even if we talked about what are the attributes of an individual who would make a great CIO, and you were talking with an HR recruiter about that. Again, I don't know that, because people think of it as a technology field, I don't think right away they're going to be thinking about these soft business skills, the communication skills, leadership skills that I think you're talking about. So that's really interesting.
I also think, can I add to that?
Oh, of course.
The CEO, the COO, the CFO who don't have technical skills, are looking for somebody to save them. So they think, I need a savior who understands technology. So they're going to look for the technical person, rather than they need somebody who can educate them, who can talk to them in their language, who can help them understand what they're trying to do in technology and help them understand the risk they're at. And I think it's a psychology thing that I do this presentation every once in a while around the history of IT, and it's not the ENIAC computer to the next computer to the next computer. It's really the evolution of the IT department. If you think about it, accounting's been around forever, sales and marketing have been around forever, HR's even been around forever. IT's only been around for 40 years as a department.
And so there's been so much change in that 40 years, right? And think about it, you went from mainframes with just a few people having access to data to where we are now.
Yeah. I mean, phones. I mean, you now have phones everywhere on everybody's network. I mean,
Right.
You couldn't pick up a phone in the bad old days.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even and then you go to the mobility, and now, and that'll be another subject for another day. But and then you go to IoT, and it's just, and your head starts to explode when you start to think about, how it's changed in those 40 years.
And as a business owner, how do you get your hands around that if you don't have somebody that can help educate you in a simplistic way? Because you don't need to know the bits and bytes. You need to understand in a general way how things work.
That's really interesting because, and I think you're absolutely right, because increasingly I'm seeing these, conferences and events that are geared towards very simplistic oriented education. So as an example, I spoke at an event yesterday on privacy. And afterwards, I could not believe the number of people, because I had mentioned something about blockchain, and how many people are coming up and just have no idea what it is, how it works. And just the idea of just saying to someone like, blockchain's not as complicated as you think about it. It's really just, you know what a database is? Yeah, I know what a database is. Imagine a database that instead of being private is now public, and imagine that database is replicated using peer-to-peer networking to multiple instances so that it becomes immutable, it becomes uneditable without people. That's what blockchain is. Yeah.
I just could say there is no such thing as the cloud, but
yeah, exactly. Exactly. There is no such thing as a cloud, but yet there's probably nothing more significant than the cloud at the same point, which is probably a good point to cut off that part of that conversation. Yeah, sure. So listen, you talk every day to the same kind of people that I'm talking to every day, right? Because, as a virtual CISO, right, we're engaging with the management team, we're engaging with, legal counsel and people of that nature, same kind of people that you're chatting with. What do you think would be an interesting topic for another episode of this podcast?
You probably brought it up a few times, is communication. In the IT world, communication skills in the IT professional, that's what I was thinking of, something like that. Where really it's a problem in our industry where we don't communicate, and this is communication with outside of our industry. We don't do a great job of educating just in simple conversations, not only at an event like you were at where you're educating somebody, a larger scale group of people, but even just one-on-one conversations. I hear it from my guys. I constantly have to tell them, in a conversation with an end user, you don't use acronyms. They may or may not understand what they are. At least you ask the question, do you know what an IP address is? If you don't, then explain it to them and help educate them so they understand. And I just think communication skills in our industry is one of those things that could be an interesting topic to delve into.
Yeah, very interesting. Cool. You continue to surprise me, Darek. And I actually think that's a good thing.
Good.
So before we say farewell, how can folks get in contact with you? What's the best mechanisms to get in touch with you if they wanted to chat and potentially find out about what you guys do?
So either by phone, 609-642-1337. That's my direct line. Mm-hmm. Or they can email me at dhahn, H-A-H-N, at V as in Victor, -MSP, managedserviceprovider.com.
Cool. Excellent. Anything else?
I'm good.
I'm good as well. This was actually a really, you took it a lot of places I didn't expect you to go, and I super enjoyed the conversation. So thanks. I appreciate it.
I did too. Thanks.